welcome back to Off the Bench. Brandon Carney alongside Maddie Kroll. Maddie, we are down here to the nitty gritty. We can take our time here talking about just two NFL games that we had this weekend, this Sunday, and now we are down to one. And unless you count the flag football game that we're going to have in the Pro Bowl, but otherwise, we're only down to one game left. So how are you feeling? Are the emotions starting to set in? Because I'm sad. I mean, we kind of went over it last week, but I'm even sadder now than I was last week.
Yeah, I have such a busy couple of weeks that I feel like I haven't reached the end of season sadness, but I am sad that the Chiefs will be in the Super Bowl over the Bengals.
Yeah, I feel that. I think, a lot of people were rooting for Joe Burrow and that Bengals team. The only thing really deterring people from rooting for that team is probably Eli Apple, really the only unlikable essence on that entire team. But look, it shook out the way it shook out. Let's get into just overall thoughts on championship weekend, because I have some pretty strong thoughts on how it panned out. Things that were not
It was
necessarily.
a letdown.
What's up?
It was a letdown. Sorry, I'm recording in my earbud, so I
Oh,
didn't mean to
No, you're
interrupt. I
fine.
think I'm
You're fine.
behind.
It was a letdown. It's just I felt that overall championship weekend had just no flow, and that the on-field action felt secondary, and there was like few and far between actually good plays that were happening back to back, and we were just constantly distracted by things other than the actual football being played. Honestly,
Yes.
one of the most disappointing championship weekends that I can remember. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I do feel that way, and I was about to bring that up. I think that all of the injuries played a role, and one big question that I have after this season is this is the first real season that we've had 17 games. You think about it, we were coming off of COVID the year before, and there was all of those COVID guidelines that allowed you to have more players travel with you. I wonder if we're not starting to see the disadvantages to having a 17-game season now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think roster expansion could be a thing, even if it's by one or two slots. But 17 games, naturally, you are exposing players to more wear and tear. The most notable injury example that we had was the 49ers quarterback situation. I mean, maybe we add an extra spot just so these teams can feel comfortable carrying more than two quarterbacks. A lot of teams carry only two. Some will carry three, but it's not necessarily the standard. And the Niners would be a team that would benefit from the extra one.
Well, they put in that new rule from the NFLPA. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago, but it took away that third quarterback, didn't it? Didn't it?
I'm not sure. That's very possible. That would make sense.
I could be wrong on the timeline of that, but I wonder if they maybe change that to where you can have 3, maybe even 4 rostered.
Yeah, it's just it took away from so much of the potential quality of that game. I mean, we were all looking forward to such a great 49ers-Eagles matchup, the two powerhouses of the NFC, and it just didn't shake out that way. But first, I feel like we should talk about Chiefs-Bengals, because this game, it's shocking too, because after watching Eagles-Niners, I figured that game would be the most content, like, gold mine of a game. Not in a good way, but like the one that we'd be talking about for reasons better or worse. Then the Chiefs and Bengals really surpassed that. And again, not because of the plays and the scoring and what actually happened on the field. The officiating in this one, people are up in arms, and I honestly do understand why. Maddie, in your eyes, how bad was the officiating in this game?
I feel like it was awful. I thought the NFC officiating wasn't great, and then we went to the AFC. The AFC was terrible. Not just the ending that everybody was talking about, but there was a moment in the first quarter. I like to watch offensive lines. There was a moment in the first quarter where I was like, damn, Orlando Brown Jr. stepped it up for the playoffs. Like, this dude hasn't let anything by him. So then I started watching, and it was hold after hold after hold, and they were blatant not getting called. I mean, there was one that was like questionable, but within 2 drives, I counted 4 blatant holds and one that I would argue is a hold. I just kind of feel like it was bad all around.
Yeah, I think it was pretty terrible. It was the focus of the game, which is incredibly unfortunate given the two powerhouses again that we're facing off in the AFC as well. Bengals Chiefs, we are expecting a shootout, or at the very least a hotly contested game where you come away thinking, man, those are some of the best players in the game today, and their skills were on full display, and that's what all the headlines are about. Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in the league. Kelsey looked like a beast. You got Mahomes and Burrow, maybe the best quarterback rivalry in the game now. Brady Manning-esque, but now everyone's coming away talking about the officials, and I do get it. The one thing I do want to say, though, is that I didn't think the officiating necessarily dictated the outcome of the game. I mean, it's hard to know because there were so many missed calls. There was the missed block in the back. There was the missed holding calls at the end of the game on the Mahomes run that ultimately had the unnecessary roughness, which that was a good call. But I don't think, you had the Chiefs getting that extra play. That was one of probably the most contentious thing that happened all game, that people were like, that was ridiculous. How do you allow that to happen? But that led to a punt. The Chiefs didn't score on that play. So I don't think the officiating swung the game one way or the other too hard. Again, you don't know what would have happened if a hold was called or not. Maybe there's a touchdown right after that we will never know about. But it just sucks that in a game where it didn't even swing the outcome, we're still talking about it. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
It was really, really awful. And I do also want to say that I don't think the NFL is rigged by any means, because you're seeing people scream that from the mountaintops because of most of those calls or no calls going in the Chiefs' favor. I will never think the NFL is rigged. That is not how I'm wired. I think there's too many people involved, too many people that would spill those beans, even if it was, any sort of agenda at any level. So I'll never, ever think that. Look, is it possible that one or two refs are crooked? I mean, we've seen it in the NBA. Sure. But I don't even think that's what happened here. It was just a case of really bad officiating and a result of officials are not held accountable. Like, they're not, at least not publicly. And so we need to find a way to make them do a better job in ways that fans at least can be confident that they are working on it, other than just these statements out. It's not helping anybody. We don't have any faith, and I get that part of it.
We have to have some sort of fining system.
Even if it's not fines, like, take guys off of games for a while if they blow calls this badly. Like, if this were the regular season and this crew made that kind of mistake, they should not be on the games for the following week. Like, they should be going over their mistakes or something to mitigate this, because otherwise we just don't have any reason to believe that anything is going to change. And we've been dealing with this for a while. I think things are
a long time.
Yeah, I think things are finally coming to a boil because this was inevitable with the age of the internet and people being able to overly scrutinize these things. So I think after years and years and years and years of people criticizing officials, we are getting to a point where there's going to have to be some sort of actual change, because people are going to lose faith in the league, and the league knows that. Like, whether the league is rigged or not, which again, I highly, highly, highly doubt it is, and I'll never believe it is, if you start to get enough people believing it is, that's a problem in itself. Like, you're going to lose some of those casual fans. They'll never lose the hardcores like us who know that at the end of the day, that's a ridiculous concept. But they will lose people who may be okay not watching it because they really do think it's fixed, and that's bad. That's a really bad look for the NFL. So we got to figure something out here.
I think probably what we're going to see happen first is players are going to start getting in trouble for tweeting out, because there were multiple players who aren't involved. They are now in their off season, but who are vocalizing that was a really bad call. And then that started getting everybody on Twitter just pissed, and they all came out like an angry mob. My question is, do you think that we're going to see a difference going into the Super Bowl? Because everybody knows in the off season, calls are a little bit different, right? They let things get a little bit more physical. They don't want to stop the game as much. So do you think after what happened, because there were complaints about the NFC game as well, do you think after those complaints, there'll be adjustments in the Super Bowl?
I don't know what kind of adjustments you can make other than the NFL making sure that their crew knows what the pressure that's going to be on their shoulders in this game. Like, we're coming off of a championship weekend heavily impacted by officiating one way or the other, just impacting the quality of the games. Again, I don't think it impacted the results too much, but impacting the quality of the games, and the refs are going to have the microscope on them even more than they already did in this Super Bowl. The only thing slightly in their favor is that these two teams are the ones that fans have perceived as the NFL wanting in the Super Bowl. So now, are we going to also perceive that they have a desired winner? I don't know. I think this is a fascinating, fantastic matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles. You have all of these storylines that you can kind of go off of. And I don't know that logically you would have a team that you'd really want to win one more than the other. But no, the officials, there's going to be some memos sent out this week, I think. Just like, guys, we really gotta, like, you gotta bring your A game. Not that you would hopefully bring anything less for a Super Bowl. Like, this is a big deal for the refs too. They get a nice little payday from the Super Bowl, I believe. And of course, it's, they take pride in calling it a Super Bowl well. So
Absolutely.
I really think that's all it comes down to, is they know that there's going to be some pressure on them.
Yeah. Well, and it's a fresh crew, so that should help too.
Yeah, it'll be not the same faces that, we saw all weekend that were making those mistakes. Let's see for this game. What else do we have? So Jermaine Pratt. Well, let's talk about the Osai play first and foremost. I mean, I feel like the reactions to that play, there's really only one way to take it. It was a silly play. I think the call was absolutely correct. For anybody arguing it, they're like, oh, Mahomes flopped or it was barely any contact. I'm like, guys, momentum is a thing. I mean, I'm sorry. It just is. Like, there's a difference between whether I push you and we're standing like next to each other on the sidewalk, or I push you and you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. Like, there's context that has to be implied here. Mahomes is running full speed. If you push him a little bit on the back, he's going to fall. He's already on a bum ankle. Like, that's what's going to happen. So it was a really, really boneheaded play. And I think it was the right call. But Maddie, what was your reaction when you saw that play and kind of the aftermath that followed?
I do agree with it. I do think that it was the right call. Everybody who was watching that game saw that it was the right call. What I had an issue with was listening to the media this morning as I was traveling, and then in the airport, everybody's like, oh, Mahomes handled that so well. He didn't throw a fit. And I'm like, okay, he flailed. He did. He acted kind of a little bit crazy on his way out. Was he on his way out and falling? Yes, but I do think it was a bit dramatic. So I don't think that we should give him like a ton of praise for saying he was going to let it go. He was not going to let it go. He's smart. He knows what he was doing. Is heading forward, and then he may have leaped a little bit more to get that call.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I do think, if I'm in his situation, I'm going to do the same thing. But at the end of the day,
can't blame him.
No matter whether he's flailing or not, that's going to get called. I mean, he ended up in the bench basically, and I do think
it was the right call, yeah.
Yeah, the momentum was going to take him out there. I was watching that play happen, and I was just like it was happening in slow motion. I saw Mahomes get tapped, and the flag came in, honestly, kind of late. And so I was like, please don't call it. Please don't call it. Please. And then they called it. And I was like, okay, I know it's the right call, but damn it. Because it was just, you knew the game was given away. You knew that was putting them right into makeable field goal range. And then after the play, after the game, you had Jermaine Pratt yelling at his teammate in the locker room. I don't know if you saw that video, Maddie, but it was pretty bad. It was just like, why did you touch him? And you don't, that kind of stuff doesn't come to light too often. What was your reaction to that video? Did you think that was like expected?
I was torn, to be honest, because if you put yourself in their position, you're going to be doing the same thing. Honestly, I would be like, Brandon, what the hell were you thinking?
Right.
Anybody does. They're like brothers. You're going to call them out. And then after those emotions settle down, you can start processing things clearly. Where I felt bad was the media was right there during that emotional time. They have no time to themselves to be able to process things or think through things before they have to face millions of people who want to know, why did you do that?
Right. Yeah,
I think that's a tough position to be in.
It's one of those things where you probably don't expect cameras to necessarily be on you in that moment. I mean, of course, they're NFL players and they know that a lot of their moves are going to be watched, but that is a situation where that's not even a thought in Jermaine Pratt's mind or any of those players. And I do think it's something that will absolutely blow over. I just think it's such a tough thing because now the public is going to perceive him as like being some bad guy who's like ripping on a teammate. And I'm like, the emotions are going to get the better of you in that moment. Jermaine Pratt, I believe, is a free agent now. This could have been his last game as a Cincinnati Bengal. It doesn't seem like they're too willing to bring him back or actively trying too hard to re-sign him. So this could be his last game as a Bengal, and it's tough to go out that way. Free agency is interesting as well because he may go somewhere where he's not going to have a Super Bowl chance necessarily, or at least not as good of one as is going to happen on the Bengals, a team that is built to compete for the next several years. So Osai, he'll be okay. He'll get through this. But Pratt, you understand there's other guys who are in different situations who are going to be a little bit more affected by this. I don't blame him for his reaction. I just hope and assume that they, smooth things over after the fact because it's not a petty thing. It's professional sports. They were so close to making the Super Bowl for the second year in a row. Like you're gonna be upset. That's what it is.
And I think it was just an emotional reaction. And then once you start thinking rationally, you apologize. And on the other side of it, I think that you understand as a teammate, like you're doing it the same thing to yourself. But when you have the outside media, that's where it gets a little bit tougher.
Absolutely. So you had the officiating taking center stage of that game. Obviously, we are about 15 minutes into this podcast. It's really the only part of the game that we've talked about, and rightfully so. So, with that said, let's get into the part that was not officiating related. The actual on-field product and the two teams facing off and strengths and weaknesses. Maddie, what were your biggest takeaways from this game? Biggest keys? Biggest thing I noticed was the Bengals O-line seemed to come back down to earth. We gave them a lot of props last week for their ability to stand up in the wake of all these injuries, that they had all of the same injuries. They're still down 3 linemen in this game. What was your takeaway from just how they kind of got bodied by the Chiefs and Chris Jones?
Yeah, I think that I actually noticed a difference in Joe Burrow. And at first I thought he was like hurt. The way he was rolling out, it was just different than what we've seen on film. His drawback steps, everything was shifted and quicker. And now I think that that's more actually attributed to the O-line. Whatever happened there, he was scared and felt like he needed to get it out. He just kind of looked flustered. But to be honest with you, I felt like more of the surprises or more of the themes that I noticed were with the Chiefs. The Bengals kind of looked like the Bengals, and they just kind of caught a bad go at it.
Yeah, I think you wanted the O-line to kind of put on a repeat performance, but I do see that the Chiefs came out hungry, motivated. Chris Jones is one of the best defensive players in football. Like, he's going to get his, no matter what the O-line is, like, he's going to make an impact on the game. It just seemed like we saw him in the backfield quite a bit up in Burrow's grill.
Well, this was the week that they decided to start tackling. We haven't seen the Chiefs tackle in honestly the entire season. They have not been consistent like through an entire game, I would say. Normally we'll see like a half or a quarter, but to be consistent, we haven't seen that all season. This was a hell of a time to decide that you're going to start tackling people.
Yeah, and look, this isn't something that a lot of people are going to want to hear after the officiating debacle, and because of how much Patrick Mahomes has been getting praised, this week, this year, his whole career. But what a hell of a game that he played on that bum ankle, losing 3 receivers throughout the course of that game. They lost Kadarius Toney, Mecole Hardman, and Juju Smith-Schuster. They were down to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Marcus Kemp, and they had Jody Fortson in at wide receiver for a while. So it was, quite an effort. He made Marquez Valdez-Scantling look like a legitimate receiver, which he's not. So it was really an impressive effort from Mahomes to make this offense look pretty normal, like pretty up to their standards. Kelsey played a great game after fighting through the back spasms that he was dealing with leading up to the game. Don't know how much he was impacted pain-wise during the game, but either way, gutsy effort from him. And the Chiefs just look like a poised team that's been here before and wants to be there again, there being the Super Bowl. Yeah. So they made it happen. I've been a Chiefs quote-unquote doubter throughout the playoffs. I don't even know if it's so much a doubter as much as I was rooting against them. Like, I fully knew that they had a good chance to win all of these games, but I just thought these other teams, facing strong ones, that they'd come out motivated and maybe get the better of them. But now they're going to the Super Bowl, whether we like it or not, and they very well may take home their second Super Bowl championship in the Patty Mahomes era. And now these storylines are going to be interesting as well. We'll get into those a little bit later when we get to our Super Bowl predictions. But Chiefs take care of the Bengals. Any other final thoughts on this game?
Nope. I guess Brittany Mahomes will not be going to Cancun, though. Not yet.
I would really love if she just got sent there and we didn't have to see her or Jackson at all during Super Bowl weekend. But
who do we need to write into to ask the NFL to find them? just for opening their mouth.
Just for existing. Find them for existing. The last thing I want to say before we move on from this game is that the Bengals were screwed once the Cincinnati mayor got involved. Incredibly cringe what he did. Just saying that Burrow was Patrick Mahomes' daddy and they were doing the DNA test.
It was an extreme.
Anytime a politician, and it's usually like the mayor or the governor or something, anytime a politician gets involved in sports, it's so awkward and awful and just makes me want to gouge my eyes out and plug my ears. It's so bad. And I understand, like, you want to have the pride for your city and whatever, but do it in a way that you're just supporting and not being cocky, because I'm sorry, we all know that these politicians 99% of the time don't actually know what's happening in the NFL world, and they don't know how they're coming off. And everyone and their mother was like, you just jinxed. You just made people root against the Bengals who weren't doing that before. Like, it's awful. It's so bad.
Yeah, but he could have done so many other things that people would have eaten up. Like show up and like take off your jacket and have a jersey underneath or
Right, of
something. Like
course.
there's so many fun things that he could have done for the attention, but that was bad. That was
Just
cringe.
something-
I said that and I was like, yo, that's too far for even me.
Yeah, just something that's not cocky. Again, you can support as much as you want, but going in and like making it seem like it's a foregone conclusion that the Bengals are going to beat the Chiefs. And I know Burrow was undefeated against Mahomes. We've talked about it a million times, but we also know that this was as even of a matchup as you can get in an AFC title game outside of Mahomes being banged up. And so we were all just like, oh, that's so bad. Don't ever do that again. Politicians, if you ever have the urge to step into the sports realm, don't. And if you're going to, don't be cocky. And also, I would just bet most of my money that mayor could not name a Cincinnati Bengals player that was not Joe Burrow. Maybe Jamar Chase. Maybe. That's probably pushing it.
My computer just fell. I'm sorry, guys. I did see a TikTok that was really funny today. Somebody said the reason why the Chiefs made it is because the Super Bowl couldn't handle a Joe Burrow versus Jalen Hurts on Twitter because all of the girls were going crazy. There were actual battles where people were screaming at each other over who was better looking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one to be upset that we have this matchup now of
Oh, I
Mahomes
thought you
versus
were one of
Hurts,
those people screaming.
because no, I'm not one of the Burrow groupies, at least not at this time. I'll let you know if anything changes. But all right, let's go on to the other game here that actually happened first on Sunday. We normally do go what's the word? In order of the games that they were played, but that one just kind of took precedence. Eagles took down the 49ers in a game that was nothing close to the game that we hoped it would be. Brock Purdy going out very early with that injury, which we now know is a UCL injury. They're evaluating his options. It's looking like it's at least 6 months right now, given the injury. Surgery could change that timeline. From what I've read, they are hoping to avoid a full reconstruction of the UCL, which any of you baseball fans out there is Tommy John surgery, which does take at least a year usually, can take up to 2 years depending how you recover. So we're hoping to avoid that. It does sound optimistic for now that it would just be a repair, but at the very least, he's out 6 months, which would take us, before the NFL season, next season, and he would be able to get back. But if he does need to get surgery, it would probably bleed into the season, and that creates all these other issues for the 49ers, but we can talk about that after we get through this game. Purdy going out of this game really left the Niners with no chance. And it kind of finally bodied the idea that anyone can play quarterback for the 49ers. We kind of been talking about that for a while, but I think Josh Johnson's the bar, I guess, that, if you get down to Josh Johnson, he cannot lead that offense.
I mean, that's a fourth-string quarterback also.
Fourth-string quarterback, a guy that has played for 17 professional football teams in 15 years, this counting like XFL and USFL teams. So, yeah, that's the bar of guys that can't play. But no, I just want to make the point that we've talked about how Kyle Shanahan does make it easier on the quarterback, and he does. But at the same time, I think the Niners have done a really good job of finding at least very solid quarterbacks, and we haven't given them enough credit for that because we haven't seen one fail in this offense in a while. So we haven't seen one fail in a Shanahan 49er offense ever. So I do think we need to give them credit finally that, it's not just that anybody can come in and hand it off to McCaffrey and throw little screens to Debo or Kittle and they'll just find the end zone. Like, you do need guys that can make reads and be calm under pressure and lead this offense. And Purdy was that guy, and he went out with that injury early, and it was all downhill from there.
Were you disappointed? The play that he went out with an injury was the play that they decided to have not your starting tight end, but your backup tight end block for you. And then he got blown up. At that point, as a coach, are you like, that's on me?
I don't think so. I think it was just such a fluky injury that I'm not really going to blame it on the personnel. I do understand that criticism, but at the same time, then you leave yourself open to, okay, we can never give our backups any snaps ever. So, it's really unfortunate that is what happened, but no, I don't blame the coaching for it. Just an unfortunate situation that robbed us of what should have been one of the best football games of the year. And instead, we got Christian McCaffrey taking snaps at quarterback.
Wasn't half bad, though.
The way it deteriorated. I mean, look, I made the joke when they traded for McCaffrey. I was like, they're just going to put him at quarterback because that's the position they needed to address at the time because it was Jimmy and I didn't have faith in him. And look, he ended up playing quarterback before it was all said and done. So victory lap that. No, I'm not victory lapping anything after this game. So really, really unfortunate situation, robbed us of an incredibly good game. And I do want to say too that I saw a lot of this. Anybody calling Brock Purdy soft, I hope you apologize. I also just want to say how stupid you are in general. People were saying this during the game when there was a little more leeway to say it than there is now, knowing that he tore his UCL. But even during the game, like assuming that a guy would be sitting out of an NFC championship game after the incredible half season that he put together, leading this team, his incredible story, that he would sit out for anything less than an injury that physically prevents him from playing is so insane to me. Like people wanted to compare it to Mahomes. They're like, oh, Mahomes stayed on the ankle. I'm like, guys, he tore his UCL. He can't grip the ball. And we didn't even know that again at the time, but you see him get hit in the arm, his throwing arm, telling his coach he can't throw. And you don't believe him? You don't believe him.
He couldn't even grip.
Like, how do you not believe him? Like, the fact that people defaulted to calling him soft rather than assuming that the injury was serious enough that he couldn't play was insane to me. Brock Purdy has not earned the right to, like, be a diva and be like, oh, no, I'm hurt little and I don't want to play. Like, no. He's a guy that's fighting for his spot in the NFL still, even with this crazy story. And he's a guy that just that's not in him. That's not in most NFL players to sit out for anything less than a truly, truly serious injury once you get to playoff time. I knew immediately that it was a major injury that was going to, it had to keep him out. It had to be a major injury to keep him out. So that bothered me a lot during that game.
Right. And we've had a pretty good sample size where we haven't seen him react like that. I actually saw a lot more people that were upset about the way Jimmy G was carrying himself on the sideline and then like the goofing around with Trey Lance and all that good stuff. And the voice where was he signing Trey? Is that what he was trying to do?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Possibly.
But I saw a lot of people upset about that. Either way, one thing that surprised me in this game, I know that it was a blowout, but the Eagles were sloppy.
Yeah.
They didn't look great.
Yeah, no, their offense left a lot to be desired, for sure.
What was interesting for me was afterwards we found out Lane Johnson actually retore his, is it his groin?
Yes.
Or abdomen? Yeah, last week. So I commend him for playing through that, but you could tell he was not up to 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be another situation where the Eagles are going to enjoy these 2 weeks off, and as are the Chiefs, honestly, with the Mahomes being banged up and Kelsey's injury issues and all of their receivers getting hurt. So these 2 weeks off are going to help them. Hopefully we get a mostly healthy Super Bowl. L'Jarius Sneed is an issue now for the Chiefs as well after Sunday. So it'll be, a good 2 weeks to get some rest, some recovery, and hopefully we get some full strength in this Super Bowl. But on the 49ers side, again, other than the Brock Purdy injury, I mean, the defensive penalties were all over the place. This was the game. We hoped that this was the game where we'd be bothered by the refs and that nothing would surpass that because 11 defensive penalties for 11 total penalties for San Francisco, only 4 for the Eagles. Big difference. And as much as you might, you can argue whether things were ticky-tack or whether refs were, off their game or whatever, the Niners looked rattled overall by the fact that they lost their quarterback and they could tell that things were swinging the wrong way. I mean, there was a blatant face mask on Dre Greenlaw in a one-on-one situation where he's just reaching right at Boston Scott's face. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I know not to do that. Like, what?
Listen to the podcast.
Right. Exactly. So I don't know.
He heard you say he was going to run everywhere.
I mean, look, the Niners were wearing jerseys that are reminiscent of the red and white Giants jerseys, so I think Boston Scott was seeing red, and Dre Greenlaw knew that he needed to stop that. They should have worn any other uniform that didn't, represent the Giants as much. But it was just bad play by the Niner defense, and the best defense in the league, and it just didn't come across that way. At the same time, the Eagles offensively being sloppy, I do think can be partially attributed to that defense just being so athletic and, overall talented. And so I think we may see something a little different in the Super Bowl. I think the Eagles' offensive woes are not something I really expect to continue 2 weeks from now. But we got the Eagles dominating the Niners and honestly having one of the easiest roads to the Super Bowl that really in recent memory, and not through any fault of their own. This is not a reason to discredit the Eagles. I think they're still the best team in the NFL. It's just both things can be true, right? You could be the best team in the NFL and catch an incredibly easy break in the playoffs by facing a Giants team that was kind of just happy to be there, to be honest. They would never admit that, but that's kind of where they were at, being a year ahead of schedule. And then a Niners team that just gets their engine ripped out right at the beginning of the game. So
Fly, Eagles, fly. Go and touchdown, 1, 2, 3.
yeah, that we need to talk about that too. Jalen Hurts singing that song. We need to work on it, Jalen. I don't know how we're gonna work on it, but we need to
lessons.
we need to get some singing. Look, my mom is a singer. She could probably teach you something and you get the pitch right here. That was tough.
Oh,
Meanwhile, the Eagles' offensive line, I guess they could just teach him. That's true. Thank you for the reminder to our producer, Thomas. That is true. The Eagles' offensive line could just give him the voice lessons, or they could just sing the song, and Jalen can, keep slinging the rock and running the rock, because that's what he's good at. So we will see him doing that in the Super Bowl as well, which takes us into our Super Bowl preview. Now, the storylines I mentioned before, we'll go through them real quick. The three biggest ones that I think are just cool things to keep an eye on: Kelce versus Kelce. Jason Kelce versus Travis Kelce. They have an incredibly entertaining podcast together. Some of the most charismatic and also best players in the NFL going head to head, each of them with one Super Bowl to their name. Now they will fight to see who gets to have the second one. I saw Jason Kelce already yelling at Pat, being like, look, you've got all the all-pros. I mean, Jason has a few himself, but you've got all these all-pros, and you're going to be the Hall of Famer. Let me get the Super Bowl. And I'm like, you both have a Super Bowl, but I get it. Like, if you're going to, try and have sort of equal accolades by the end of it, you need Jason to have more championships. So I do understand that. Don't think Travis is just going to let him have it, but
No.
we'll see how that game plays out. So that's one of the storylines. This one's super cool. The first Super Bowl to ever feature a black quarterback against a black quarterback, which is not super surprising because of, we've had more black quarterbacks emerge over the years. And in the last 20 or so years before this, every Super Bowl was pretty much occupied out of the AFC by Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, or Ben Roethlisberger. They were every single one except for the one that had Joe Flacco in it. So you understand that it wasn't necessarily as much opportunity. Now I think you'll probably see this more and more, but this is the first one, and I think that's a super cool storyline that we're going to get.
Absolutely.
And the final one, the Andy Reid revenge game. Andy Reid getting to face his former team, the Philadelphia Eagles, in the Super Bowl. And I mean, I don't know if there's going to be bad blood. Andy Reid has had so much success after leaving the Eagles that can you really hold anything against them? The Eagles have made out perfectly well for themselves as well, but it's still something interesting to look at. I keep seeing these hype videos about Andy Reid synced up to Heroes and Villains by Metro Boomin, and I'm like, man, these are fire. These are so great. It's like they just have Andy Reid say I just want a cheeseburger, and then the beat drops. I'm like, man, what a weird hype video that somehow works. I gotta respect it.
People love it. People eat
love
that
it.
up.
Andy Reid is one of the most likable coaches in the NFL. I mean, you've got him, Dan Campbell, and I know I'm missing a couple of guys, but those are the ones that come to mind right away. And that's why I think people don't mind rooting for Andy Reid in this situation. But
I feel Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel. I knew I was forgetting a big
Yep.
one. He's the one. Mike McDaniel's absolutely. Those are kind of my big three of likable head coaches for sure. So those are the storylines that a lot of people are going to be watching, or at least the ones that are, marketable, I will say, because it's not really much to do with what's happening on the field. But Maddie, what's your prediction for this game, and how do you expect this game to shake out 2 weeks from now, roughly?
I think that this is going to be a very flashy game. I think we're going to see a lot of points, but I think the Eagles are going to pull out the victory.
I'm with you. I agree.
They're just a little bit more composed, it seems, going into this.
I'm with you, but I'm nervous. I need to stop betting against Patrick Mahomes. I really do.
That's what's the scary part. But the other thing is they were hit with so many injuries. That's what worries me is if you can shut down Travis Kelce, who does Patrick Mahomes have to dump off to?
Jody Fortson and Noah Gray. What do you mean? You act like there's even a drop off between those players. It's just it's like Alan Lazard, it's like Devontae Adams once said. It's like going from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer. It's the same thing. I'm not worried about it in the slightest. No, I am worried about betting against Patrick Mahomes. I believe as of right now the Chiefs are the underdog in that game. And I saw somebody say I couldn't agree more. They're like, I can't wait to tell my kids about the time I bet on Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl as an underdog. And I'm like, oh. Don't word it that way. Damn it. But no, I'm going with the Eagles. I want Jalen Hurts desperately to get the respect that I think he deserves as a top 5 quarterback in the league, because so many people aren't putting him in that list. Like they're just kind of keeping it steady.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I think it's just people almost more so than the 49ers situation believe it's like a system type deal where they went out and got A.J. Brown, and they're just playing to Jalen's strengths of being able to run and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but Jalen just doesn't make mistakes, hardly ever. He's shown his propensity to have a great deep ball, which is something that, people don't give him enough credit for and didn't in the past either. And I'm like, I don't know what more I would want out of a quarterback. Like, he's firmly top. He's probably, if I ranked my own right now, like number 3. Like, I would go Mahomes, probably Burrow, and Jalen Hurts, and then like Josh Allen right behind him, Justin Herbert to round out the top 5. And I feel like he will get more of that credit if he can pull off this Super Bowl victory. And if he doesn't, he'll probably just keep being undervalued, underrated for another year or so, even though the Eagles have been amazing.
I agree. But even just like watching the turnaround with Devontae Smith this year, they have just been able to develop players, and I think that a lot of that has to come from the leadership that you see. He has such a good connection with those guys that you can see it play out on the field. For me, I feel like this is Jalen Hurts' opportunity to go out and say, like, everybody who said I shouldn't be the MVP, just shut them up. Just completely go out there and do your thing, because he's capable of it. I really love that he is so composed. He's so even keel. He never gets too high, never gets too low. And that's the best quality that you can find in a quarterback, especially a rhythmic quarterback like he is.
Yeah, I think it's surprisingly, it's not super often that we get the 2 MVP favorites facing off in the Super Bowl, and that's what we're going to get. And while it's not supposed to, and I don't believe it can affect voting, it's going to be a fun thing to watch between these two guys who are the clear top 2 for MVP. I mean, you got Justin Jefferson lurking in the way. You got Burrow and Allen, I think, were the other finalists. But it's down to Hurts and Mahomes, and we're going to get a title fight between 2 heavyweights in this Super Bowl, and I'm very, very excited for it.
But even if I know that the voting was done during regular season because that's when it ends, but I just want him to be able to have the opportunity. Everybody who hates the Eagles and in turn hates Jalen Hurts, I want him to have the opportunity to get in their face and just say, yeah, I'm him.
Yep, and just scream, fly, Eagles, fly, as long as he wants. All right, Maddie, let me get an official score prediction from you before we move off of this. I'm going 31-27 Eagles, which I think does fit your sort of offensive showcase, fireworks deal. I mean, it's not, Patriots Eagles from a few years ago, whereas I believe 41-33, but still relatively high offensive scoring game, and with 2 defenses who are playing well as well. So this shows you what I think is going to happen, that the offenses are going to, find a way to make it work. But what do you got? Point totals.
You said 31-28.
31-27.
Oh, 27.
Big difference, I know.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it makes more sense. I was just trying not, because 31 was the first thing that came into my mind, but that's also, I think, what they scored this past weekend. I'm going to go. I think it's going to be closer. I really do.
Really? Think we're going down to like last second field goal type deal?
You said, okay, I'm getting my numbers mixed up. No, I do think that it's going to be a little bit more than that. Okay, so I'm going to go 30. I'm going to stick with 31. I know it's the same as you, but I apologize.
That's
31-21. I think we're going to see a 10-point difference.
All right, 31-21. So you got the Eagles a little bit more in control here, or at the very least pulling away toward the end. So
yes.
All right.
That's mainly because I didn't want to go the exact same as you.
All right, I respect that. Well,
it seems crazy to think it's going to go over 31 points, though.
Yeah,
as the higher
does.
Score.
It does. I mean, I've seen all these playoff games, I feel like, have not been crazy high scoring. And with these 2 teams, like, I don't see it being the defense is being a funnel for the offense. Like, it's going to be a a medium sort of offense game. But with these offenses so high powered, I think being right around 30 for both of them feels right. All right. So there you have it. Maddie and I both possibly ignorantly betting against Patrick Mahomes, but we will revisit that. We'll also be able to talk about it next week. God, we've got to figure out what we're going to talk about next week because we did our Super Bowl preview now. I mean, hopefully there's some developments next week. Damn.
Oh, there's going to be plenty to talk about, I'm sure.
I'm sure there will be. Well, look, one thing that's been constantly developing and is going to continue throughout the offseason is the many coaching changes that we've been dealing with. So let's run through them a little bit. We can give our thoughts on each one. If, maybe we'll have a lot, maybe we'll have a couple, but latest coaching changes. So as far as head coaches are concerned, the only officially hired head coach thus far has been Frank Reich with the Panthers. I like that move. I think them getting an established guy and a guy who's, had a track record of success and probably just needs a new a change of scenery. I think going to Carolina is a good fit for him. Would you agree?
I do. I'm nervous to see what happens with the quarterback situation, though.
Yeah. So
do you think he cares about that, or do you think he's just like, it's a job?
Probably just it's a job. I mean, Frank Reich's not a guy at this stage of his career that can be super picky. Obviously, a respected guy in the league, but he's probably just like, I'll make this work. I'll figure it out.
But after his last season, you think like you better come out and do something this season. I would think because if not, he's facing the chopping block again.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback situation will be interesting because Sam Darnold is not under contract, so it's a matter of whether they want to bring him back or go up and get, a young guy in the draft if they want to take a chance on a Will Levis kind of guy, whatever they want to do, but it's interesting. All right, so that's the only head coach that has been confirmed. Another head coaching gig that seems to be trending a certain direction. Maybe we'll get confirmation in the next couple days, or maybe the rug will get pulled out, but it seems like DeMeco Ryans is heading toward being the Texans' new head coach. What do you make of that one?
That one shocked me a little bit.
Really?
What about you?
It didn't shock me. I mean, look, very high-profile coordinator. You didn't think he'd want it, really. So, I don't know. I mean, look, the Texans have obviously been in a bad place for a few years. I mean, they were competitive with Deshaun Watson, so I shouldn't say it hasn't been that long that they've been this pitiful. But the Deshaun Watson thing went up in flames in a really bad way, and now it's just kind of this roster is desolate. There's not a lot of talent on it. There's very minimal talent on it. So you're bringing in DeMeco Ryans, probably going to establish some sort of defensive identity, but ultimately I think it's just a guy going back to the team he played for and wanting to bring it up and make them not embarrassing anymore.
That's why I feel like he wouldn't want to go back, and it has nothing to do with where they're at. It has more to do with that ownership is a dumpster fire right now. Yeah. And if you think about it, like if I'm thinking about going back, I'm not trying to go back to a place where I'm going to be miserable or it's not like it was, you know what I mean? Like the ownership is really kind of the one thing that made me do a double take is he really considering this?
Yeah, I get that. I'm excited though. I think DeMeco Ryans is a guy. He's one. There's always coordinators every hiring cycle that we hear are rumored and we get excited about seeing them potentially as a head coach, and then they end up just staying where they are. Seems like DeMeco is going to be a guy that does move on and take on a head coaching gig, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. It's probably not a situation. I got burned by investing too much in the Broncos, so it's probably not a situation that I'm going to be investing in too many Texans fantasy players because these first-time head coaches scare the shit out of me. But anyway, I am excited to see how it plays out with him leading the team that he was once one of their best defensive players.
Yeah, I just hope that the ownership doesn't cut him after a year. Like, give anybody a couple years at least.
I really don't think they will. I think rid of Lovey and getting rid of their interim head coach. It's just those weren't the guys they wanted. And if you're going out and intentionally getting a high profile coordinator, you're going to give him at least, I mean, it's not a long time, at least 2 years. And then as long as he's showing some semblance of competence, I think they'll keep him around. But I agree with you. I mean, it is a concern with how they've handled head coaches. Got a bunch of offensive coordinator changes. So we'll go through these real quick. The Chargers hiring Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. I didn't see this one coming because the Cowboys, they just cut ties with him. I figured if Kellen Moore was going to go anywhere, it was to be a head coach.
Do you think that he took the interview and they were just pissed off? Like, what happened there? What was the fallout? Because why in the hell would you get rid of Boy Wonder and keep Mike McCarthy?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Jerry Jones likes Mike McCarthy a lot for whatever reason, and I think they kind of needed some semblance of a scapegoat from this Cowboys season and how it kind of deteriorated. Look, that play at the end of the game, at the end of the Cowboys game, as far as we know, was a Kellen Moore call, and that was an absolute disaster of a play that was just trying to be too big-brained, and it didn't work. So I think the Cowboys maybe made the decision that they were going to part ways with Kellen Moore, and maybe Kellen Moore realized that he didn't have any slam dunk head coaching openings, and he's probably relishing the chance to work with Justin Herbert. I mean, I would. So
why not? Yeah.
Right. So I'm excited. I'm hoping that Kellen Moore is, still the real deal. He's a guy whose his stock has tanked a little bit thanks to the playoffs, but he's a guy that if he can be the boy wonder, like you said, that, we've been hearing about for the last few years, I would love to see him turn Herbert's career around and get him to be the top 5 guy that I know he is and can be.
Me too. I honestly think that is a great fit.
Yeah, I agree. Chargers finally have a guy that, can get maybe the best out of Justin Herbert. And then other offensive coordinators will go down the list. The Rams hired Mike LaFleur, former Jets offensive coordinator. My Patriots finally hiring Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, and the Jets hiring Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator.
That's a total Jets move.
It is a very Jets move. A lot to unpack here. I don't have too much to say about the Mike LaFleur one, other than I think he's a solid offensive coordinator. That Jets team showed some flashes this year with the Mike White and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall before he got injured, that kind of combination. So I think he can be an effective coordinator with the Rams. Patriots hiring B.O.B. Yes. Thank God. Just thank God. I mean, Matt Patricia, as far as I know, is still in the building. I don't know what the hell he's doing, but he's not going to be the offensive coordinator. Patriots bringing in a familiar face, a guy who was the offensive coordinator, in some of our most productive years. Obviously, those years were led by Tom Brady, who we no longer have, but I love the move. I mean, it's a guy who's familiar with the system and who, crazy concept, has experience coaching offense. I mean, what a concept. And you've got him.
Is that needed?
You would, sometimes some people recommend it. He's going to get to work with.
Saturday didn't think so. Anyways,
that's true. He's going to get to work with Mac Jones, a guy who he didn't directly coach while at Alabama, but they were Bill was coming in, Mac was going out to the draft, and Mac was actually teaching Bill the playbook for Alabama. He was getting him familiar with it because he was on his way out. So, there's a connection there, assuming that the Patriots stick with Mac coming in. I'm excited for Bill O'Brien. The one thing I'm curious about is how much this impacts the Patriots, if there are any hopes and aspirations of getting DeAndre Hopkins. Because I have no idea what that relationship is like. I really don't. We all look back at that as being possibly the worst trade in NFL history. And trust me,
awful.
I'm thankful that Bill O'Brien's not coming in to have any sort of general manager duties. But Bill O'Brien was a solid coach. Does DeAndre Hopkins hold ill will toward Bill O'Brien? Because at the end of the day, he was traded for peanuts, but DeAndre got to go to the Cardinals, who at the time had, high upside. He was able to go to a rising team, and the Texans were not as much of a rising team, and they just got David tanking. Johnson. So it was what it was. I don't know how that's going to affect things, but it'll be interesting to see. And then the Jets getting Nathaniel Hackett. Is this more Rodgers bait, you think?
I mean, that's what everybody's saying, but I'm like, it didn't work the first time. So what makes you think that it's going to work the second time?
Yeah.
Also, we saw what happened when this man didn't have a good offensive line, and you want him to go post up in the pocket behind the New York Jets offensive line. Yeah. To get him there, you would literally have to let him handpick his offensive line and his receivers. I'm totally convinced that's the only way you're going to get Aaron Rodgers to go somewhere.
Well, hey,
unless you already have it loaded.
Look, hopefully they get Mekhi Becton back, which shout out to Mekhi Becton, big fan of mine actually on Instagram, has followed my stuff for a while. So thank you. Ooh. Appreciate you. Hopefully they get him back and maybe that O-line can, improve a little bit. But yeah, I don't feel like they hired him as Rodgers bait. Maybe that's in the back of their mind and they're hoping, but I think they hired him because they've seen him coach successful offenses in the past, and I don't know how I feel about it. It feels very Jets stay Jets to me, where there's a strong chance this guy fails too, and they didn't go out and get a guy who is maybe more up and coming and has a little more upside as a coordinator. So I don't know. It doesn't feel great.
Yeah, maybe they're planning on trying to get a quarterback.
Yeah, you would hope. And then defensive coordinator side, the Falcons have hired Ryan Nielsen. And the Dolphins hiring Vic Fangio, making him expected to be the highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL. As a Patriots fan, I hate this move. As an objective person, what a move for the Dolphins. I mean, that is
such a good
incredible.
move.
That is incredible. That offense is absolutely electric, and now they've got a guy to hold down the defense and shore up that side of the ball. I feel like this is a home run hire for the Dolphins, and it's exactly what they need to do. Look, fingers crossed that Tua can get through a full season next year with none of these concussion issues, none of that nonsense, and this Dolphins team can challenge to be one of the best teams in football. Absolutely, with Vic Fangio.
100%. This is exactly what they needed to be able to kick off their offseason. This was perfect timing, and this is going to be a great fit.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I mean, I have no criticisms about it. Anyone getting Vic Fangio is going to be a home run, and a team that already has one side of the ball so effective, for most of the season, and now they're getting him on the other side. It just absolute monster move. So those are all the coaching changes as we have them right now.
I have one to kind of throw in.
Yeah.
So I'm in Mobile, Alabama for Senior Bowl, and on my flight here, I sat next to Wink Martindale. I kept my chill. I was not crazy, but he was decked out head to toe in Giants gear. So as of now, I know that he's interviewed with the Colts, but he is not gone.
Wow. All right. Well, that's interesting.
Still rocking Giants gear.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. We're not going anywhere. Wink's not going anywhere, at least not yet. We'll see.
I did embarrass myself, though. It's weird seeing coaches outside of the football environment. It's like seeing a teacher outside of school. And I was so straight-laced. I was like, okay, like, don't move your legs too much. Don't stretch. Like, normally I'm stretching on planes. I didn't do anything weird except for when he talked to me. He said, we were talking for a little bit, and then he introduced himself, and I was like, yeah, I know who you are. Big fan of your blitz. I love how aggressive you are. And then I was like, why did you say that? You're such an idiot.
Maddie, always calm.
So I had to hide
cool.
from him the rest of the way.
Always composed under pressure, Maddie Kroll, when she comes in contact with NFL coaches. That's
just
amazing.
Outside of the field. It's like, I don't know how to talk to you like a normal person.
No, that makes sense. So those are the coaching changes that we have, not including Wink Martindale. That's what we got for now. Of course, we'll be monitoring this all off season. And look, I'm actually excited for our podcast once the off season hits because the drama is just incredible. It's coaching changes wise, trade rumor wise, anything, free agents other than not the wide receivers because this wide receiver class is so bad. I don't know if you've seen it. It's led by Jacoby Myers and like Sterling Shepard, and I love Jacoby. But regardless, we close out the podcast. Well, actually, we'll have one more thing after this, but we usually close out the podcast with the viewer questions. First one coming in. In your opinion, what are the top 3 reasons everyone hates Philly so much? Go Birds. Maddie, you have thoughts on this?
I think maybe it has to do with to be honest, we're just going to blame this all on Carson Wentz. Everybody just still hates. No, I'm just joking. I don't know. I've heard this stuff about the Santa. I don't know. Everybody hates Philly, and they have forever. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, this question's coming from an Eagles fan, obviously. I think always NFL fans perceive that their fan base is hated more than it actually is. Philly 100% has this reputation of being the most ridiculous fans that booed Santa and that they need to grease their poles because people are going to go insane. I don't know, though, that
but
other
people
fans
still claim them.
Yeah, I don't know that other fans hate Philly to where they're rooting against the team because I find a lot of objective fans are rooting for the team. But if you're asking why they hate the fans, it's because you guys are insane. You're lunatics. You're unruly. That's why.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought that it had more to do with the other teams don't like to play in Philly because their fans are just crazy. They heckle, and it's the same way in the NBA.
Yeah, and
the
it's
Sixers
funny.
go and people are screaming things that you're is that even allowed? Yelling out racial slurs for jokes. It's crazy.
And it's funny because it's become a self-fulfilling thing, right? With Eagles fans, it's you have young Eagles fans growing up oh, our fan base is insane and rude and awful. So I can do that? I'm allowed to do that? Oh, hell yeah. Of course they're going to take that opportunity. Until we break that sort of stigma that they're allowed to do that, that's what's going to keep happening. So.
And you also have to think about it's usually cold there. And what do you do when you're cold? You drink alcohol that warms you up. So these people are just plastered in the stands.
Yeah, the Philly fans.
Same thing with Buffalo. Those people start tailgating, which I know they do in Kansas City. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't affect it, but
the Philly fans are a big problem. I'll say this from Shane O'Pax. take solace in the fact that I don't think people hate your team, because a lot of people are rooting for the Eagles. The Eagles are a very likable team, but yeah, your fan base, you guys are insane. That's
It's you guys.
The second and last question is: are the Chiefs becoming the new Patriots? This question from Dawson.
Ooh.
My answer is very simple. When you combine an all-time great head coach with what looks to be an all-time great quarterback, this is what's going to happen. I've seen it happen. If they both stick around and Mahomes stays healthy, yeah, they are.
I would throw Travis Kelce in there too. I mean, it's
Right.
just the same Tom Brady, Belichick, Gronk.
Right, absolutely. The only thing they're missing is their like Edelman. That's really it. And even then, they've got time. But yeah, look, they have the core pieces in place. The two most important things in football: head coach, quarterback. They have top 2, if not top 1 guys at each of those spots. Yes, they're the new Patriots for as long as those guys are around. Pains me to say, but like this team is going to be top 2 in the AFC, at the very least top 3 every year, as long as those guys are around. They just are, unless they completely bungle the rest of the roster, which they won't. So yeah, they're the new Patriots, as crazy as it sounds.
Oh.
And to finally close this out, I don't even have much to say about this. I'm just excited. The Pro Bowl. This is our last podcast before the Pro Bowl. I'm excited to talk about what actually played out at the Pro Bowl, because right now, I mean, we have details about what the events are. There's a few of them. There's a water balloon toss. There's going to be a flag football game. I think there's like a Madden tournament. There's a bunch of stuff going on. I'm really excited. Maddie, I just want to get your thoughts overall on the new Pro Bowl format. Like, how do you feel about this? I think it's an absolute slam dunk.
I'm so excited because nobody's watched in the past because it was so boring. You couldn't touch the guys were nervous to run. They didn't want to get hurt. They didn't want to get fined. So this is going to be something that they're actually competitive and invested in. And honestly, it's just adding in fun games that we would want to play ourselves. So I think that it just will bring in the audience that they're looking for, but it's going to be more enjoyable entertainment for us when we're tuning in.
No, I think it's genius. And I mean, these are events and games that they had, last year, and I think for probably a couple of years, but they were always secondary to the game, at least as far as how they were marketed.
The flag football wasn't though, right?
Right. No, the flag football it wasn't, because
and that's where I feel like that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever played flag football?
I have played flag football. It's great.
I think it's much more fun than getting your skull bashed in whenever you're having to say like, oh, I have to protect myself. I can't get hurt. But playing flag football, they're going to be running out there like they're playing basketball. It's going to be so much fun. Absolutely.
But yeah, they had some of the games I remember last year. They had dodgeball last year 100%, and for a couple of years, I think. And then they had like the catch competition as well. So I don't know if they had Madden. I don't know if it was affiliated with the Pro Bowl. But
I do remember the catch competition last year was so good with Jefferson.
Yeah, and I think just now that you have these things, these are the focus, and that they're going to be able to go all in on these things. Like the Pro Bowl, it's called the Pro Bowl games. I think these are going to be something that fans can look forward to every year. Like after a long NFL season, 29 I guess before the Pro Bowl, it's 28. 28 fan bases have had their hearts broken by this point in some way, whether it's been a long season of knowing that your team is bad or your team got bounced from the playoffs. Now you get to see some of these guys just have fun and, be lighthearted and still be able to root for them because they're going to be competitive. That's the best part. These are games that they can go full bore in and not worry about it. The only thing I'm worried about a little is the flag football. Let's just make sure the lateral movements aren't too strong here, because in the Pro Bowl, right, you're going at half speed the whole time, if not a quarter speed, so you're not going to hurt anything no matter what you do. In this, I'm almost worried that with no contact, they're going to be like, oh shit, just like trying to juke each other out real hard, and somebody's going to twist their ankle. I'm like, God damn it. And then we're going to have that ruined. But no, Pro Bowl overall, A+ move. Let's see how it shakes out. I'm going to be glued to the TV watching this one because I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm so excited. It's going to be a good time.
All right, that's all we've got for you guys this week. We are heading into the Pro Bowl. In 2 weeks, we will have the Super Bowl. Thank you guys for watching. Maddie, any final thoughts for our wonderful viewers?
No, we'll see you guys next week.
All right, I'll see you guys. Hey, have a good week, and we'll see you next time.